We're all told to take charge of our lives. But what does that even mean, really? Most of the time, it brings up images of rigid plans, color-coded schedules, and that whole hustle culture thing. But what if there's a better way, a more human way? Well, today, we're going to build a completely different blueprint, what we're calling an architecture for genuine self-direction.
And this right here, this is our foundation. It's a pretty radical idea that completely flips the script on typical self-help. Think about it. What if the whole point isn't to race to some destination, but to make the journey itself richer, more present, and more meaningful? This is the core idea we're going to build everything on today.
So first up, let's just throw out the old definition. Taking charge isn't just about sticking to a 5-year plan no matter what. It's about conscious decision-making. It's about realizing that even choosing to be spontaneous, to ditch the plan for a day, well, that's an act of agency too.
So often, we're taught to see life as this vehicle, right? And goals are the destinations on a map. You're just trying to get from A to B as efficiently as possible. But that way of thinking reduces living to just a checklist. The blueprint we're putting together today sees things completely differently. Okay, let's lay the first stone of our architecture, and that is control. How we perceive our own power to influence what happens to us is the absolute bedrock of agency. And to understand it, we're going to blend some fascinating modern psychology with some surprisingly relevant ancient philosophy. So a psychologist named Julian B came up with these 2 core mindsets. Just think about it for a second. After you take an exam, is your first thought, I earned that grade with my studying, or is it more like, wow, that teacher was so unfair? The first one, that's an internal locus of control. It sees you as the author of your life. The second one, the external one, well, that sees you as just a character in someone else's story.
But here's the big question. How do you actually build that internal belief? It turns out the ancient Stoics gave us a super practical tool. The philosopher Epictetus basically said, the most important task in life is to draw a line in the sand, separate what you can control from what you can't, and then pour all of your energy into that first list.
A job interview is the perfect example of this in action. You absolutely control your preparation, your research, and your attitude. But you have zero control over the interviewer's bad mood, or the other candidates, or the final decision. By focusing only on your part of the equation, you perform at your absolute best, and you protect your own peace of mind no matter what happens. It's so powerful.
And this is where it all clicks together. This Stoic practice isn't just some nice thought experiment. It's a mental workout. It's like going to the gym for your mind. Every single time you consciously separate what's in your control from what isn't, you are literally building the psychological muscle of an internal locus of control. You're turning a simple mindset into a trainable skill.
Okay, so we have our foundation of control. Now let's look at the engine that actually drives this whole thing forward. Let's talk about choice. What is it that makes a decision truly, authentically our own?
The existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre just drops this bombshell on us. He argues that there's no pre-written script, no essential human nature. We exist first, and only then do we define who we are through our choices. We are, as he says, condemned to be free. We can't escape it, and that freedom, well, that's a massive responsibility. And because that kind of radical freedom can be pretty terrifying, we often try to run from it. Sartre called this escape bad faith. This is when we say things like, oh, I had no choice, I was just doing my job, or I can't help it, that's just the way I am. We're basically pretending we're just objects, like a rock or a table, without any freedom, just to avoid the anxiety that comes with total responsibility.
Now, what's really cool is that modern psychology gives us a different language for this exact same idea. Self-determination theory makes this crucial distinction. Autonomous motivation is when you act because you truly want to. The why comes from within. Controlled motivation, on the other hand, is when you act because you feel you have to, because of some pressure, either from the outside like a boss, or from the inside like guilt.
And here's the synthesis, the big connection. What Sartre was describing philosophically as bad faith is pretty much what psychologists are now describing as a life run on controlled motivation. When you say, I had to do it, you're not just philosophically deceiving yourself, you are psychologically describing a state where you've handed over your own autonomy. So we have a foundation of control, and we have an engine of authentic choice, but how do we actually put them into action in the real world? This final section is all about how we live our lives, and how we solve that classic tension between having a rigid plan and just living in the moment.
Okay, first, let's talk about the plan. The science of goal-setting theory shows us what an effective goal actually looks like. It's not some vague wish like get in shape. No, it's a specific, challenging goal that you're actually committed to, with a clear way to see if you're making progress. This is the basic structure we need for any kind of deliberate action.
But, and you knew there was a but coming, right? There's a dark side. This is where that obsession with a destination can get really dangerous, just like that opening quote warned us about.
I mean, research on what's been called goals gone wild gives us some pretty chilling examples. The intense focus on hitting cost and weight goals for the Ford Pinto led managers to literally ignore fatal safety flaws. At Sears, strict sales quotas for auto mechanics led to widespread fraud. See the pattern? When the goal becomes everything, the journey can become incredibly toxic. So what's the alternative to that toxic goal-obsessed state? Well, it's a psychological state called flow, a concept pioneered by the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. This is that magical feeling, and I bet you felt it, of being so absorbed in what you're doing that time just disappears, and the activity itself is its own reward.
So how do you get there? What's the secret sauce for flow? Well, it's a concept called automaticity. Think about a great guitarist. Their fingers are moving almost mindlessly over the strings because of thousands of hours of practice. That's muscle memory. And that frees up their conscious mind to be fully, mindfully immersed in the music. That automatic skill is what allows for total engagement.
And this brings us to the final, absolutely brilliant synthesis of this whole thing. Goals aren't the enemy of flow, they are the launchpad for flow. You set a clear, challenging goal, like learning a piano piece. That goal drives the deliberate, hard practice that you need to build the skill to build that automaticity. And once the mechanics become effortless, you are finally free to experience the pure joy of just playing. You're in a state of flow. The goal was never the destination, it was just the scaffolding.
So let's put all the pieces together. With a foundation of control, an engine of authentic choice, and a strategy that uses goals to create flow, we have it, the complete architecture of agency. And this, really, is the ultimate point of it all. The goal of taking charge isn't to get to some finish line faster. It's to build yourself into the kind of person who can experience the journey, the very process of living, as its own reward, with deep engagement, with resilience, and with authenticity. So, we've laid out the blueprint. We've combined some timeless philosophy with cutting-edge psychology. Now the only question that really matters is the one for you. How will you design your architecture of agency?